Okay, so to recap, in our marking definitions D2, we had that XM is bisecting angle ZXY. Oops. Angle ZXY. Okay. So angle ZXY. So I could look at this as one side of angle ZXY started at Z. I went along to X, and then instead of going to Y, it is being broken by the bisector XM. So this is one of my congruent angles being formed that I'm going to mark with that arc. What would I name this angle? Angle what?
MXZ.
Yeah, ZXM or MXZ. Okay. And what if I looked at this ZXY angle again, but from the other side? I'm going to start at the Y side this time. And this angle from Y, and again, is being broken, cut with this bisector XM. So I mark this with another arc. This time, this is angle YXM, or MXY. I like going kind of symmetric with my bisector in the middle. For one particular reason, I like that I can see that this bisector, this shared side, exists as a side in both of my angles. All right, so that was step one, is mark those angles congruent, and when I mark them, I like to go ahead and name them. I like to name them side by side. So I see Thomas, you listed them above and below each other, which is technically fine. I like to name them side by side because my next step is going to be setting them congruent to each other as a statement. And if I name them side by side, I've saved myself a step later. So that next step is to state my angles are congruent. If I've named them side by side, it's as simple as writing a congruency symbol. It's not just stating they're congruent, because we said with proofs, the key difference with a proof is we always give a reason and evidence that has been accepted as true, either because it's already proven or because it's a key definition that's accepted as true. This is specifically a definition. What definition is this? Because definition of what? Looking back at the given, what are we dealing with here? Thomas? What kind of bisector? What's being bisected here? An angle or a segment? Angle. So we can use the shortcut. We could just say angle bisector. This is the definition that I get to use as the evidence that these angles are congruent. If I take a larger angle and I bisect it, it creates two congruent angles based on the definition of an angle bisector. That's my reason. That's my evidence. And that's it for number one. Okay. So Melody, we need the statement of congruency. Thomas, we got your congruency statement. We need the reason definition of angle bisector. Still waiting on that reason from most people. Have not yet seen definition of angle bisector. Okay, what is being created by this statement that segment RM is perpendicular to segment TU? Chase?
Two sets of vertical angles, or four separate vertical angles.
That would be based on any intersecting lines. This is more specific. More specific than just intersecting lines. These are specifically perpendicular lines.
For right angles.
For right angles, exactly. Okay, so we're creating right angles. What is our first step when we have perpendicular lines creating right angles? Talia? Yep, we create our right angle squares. So I want to identify where those right angles are taking place. That's going to be where RM, segment RM, intersects with segment TU. I'm not given a letter for that point, but I can still identify that's taking place at this point here. Just to be careful, in this case it's pretty obvious the other angles aren't right, but I can't go off of how things look in geometry at this point. I have to go off of what I was given. And then I can mark all 4 of these angles with squares to indicate they're right angles. What would be the best way to name these angles as I list out my right angles that I have? How should I name these angles when I list them? Any thoughts? Well, if I go angle, yeah, I can just use angle 1, angle 2, angle 3 because they have numbered them for me. So that saves me time. I should use the shortest legal way to name the angles. Angle 2, oops, angle 2, angle 3, and angle 4. Right? So I've listed out those angles that I've marked as right angles. What is the second action step when I am given perpendicular lines? These perpendicular lines have created right angles. I have marked those angles right as right angles with my squares. What is my next step? That's it. That's it. So angles 1, 2, 3, and 4 are right angles. I can abbreviate that way. That's a legal abbreviation for right angles. And here's my reason, because definition of perpendicular lines. Another legal abbreviation there. Okay. And then make sure we get that word lines at the end. There we go. All right, so everyone digitally got that. We all have definition of perpendicular lines? Okay. Number 3. This one is actually an exact duplicate of the example in your notes. So I'm going to give you a moment to complete this. If you'd like, you can try it on your own. I'm going to talk through it in a moment. I want to give you a chance to try it on your own. You can check it against your notes. A midpoint creates congruent segments. Something you might add to your notes here, a midpoint is also a segment bisector. This is going to become important in the next question, so I would add this here. The midpoint is the segment bisector of the segment AB. So here's how I might work this problem as a recap from our exercise last week. I'll label my 2 segments that I marked congruent, state them as congruent, and then give my reason, because definition of, and when I'm looking for my definition of, the thing I was given was midpoint, so I'm going to go definition of midpoint. If I'd been told N was the bisector of segment NB, AB, then I would say definition of segment bisector. But they gave me the term midpoint. I'm going to use definition of midpoint. That's what they gave me. Do you have a question? Okay, I'm going to hide some names and show some of the results I have digitally right now, because I want to point out a few things that could use some correction for full credit. The thing go away? Okay. If you're going to share, that's your. All right, so someone corrected real fast. We need the congruency symbol between the two. We haven't stated that they are congruent until we have the congruency symbol, so that was one. That one was all correct, so that's good. This class kick was a little better in this respect. Okay, so this one still needed to complete the definition. There we go. Definition of midpoint. That one's fully correct now. That's good. Okay, that one's been corrected since, okay, we're getting there. All right, someone filled in their congruency there. Okay. All right, statement. Okay, this one still needs tick marks. The tick mark should be the first thing that is action step number 1 is tick marks. All right. And then our definition should be with our congruency statement. So if you're going to write your congruency statement down here, then write your definition in a similar place, not kind of all off to the side. All right. So you want to move that over.
Feels weird.
Yes. Startles me too. Okay. So a few things to check on there. Buy me a new monitor. Okay. All right. Moving on to number 4. I want you to discuss with each other what is different about number 4. Discuss with each other what is different about number 4 compared to what we have seen so far. With each other. Okay, so everyone's number 3 should be graded now. All right, anyone want to share something that stood out different about this? What is different about this compared to what we've done so far? Which angles aren't? Okay, the perpendicular is not a piece of information given here. Okay. It says bisects, right? What is being bisected? The segments. So it says bisect, and in our notes we have bisector, but that's talking about an angle bisector. But are angles being bisected here? No. So when it says they bisect each other, this segment BD is bisecting AC, and this segment AC is bisecting BD. So when I'm looking at my notes to figure out which action steps should I take, which of those boxes should I be looking at? Midpoint, bisector, perpendicular, or perpendicular bisector? Midpoint. Because what is being bisected? The segments. And what did I say we should write under midpoint? That it is also a segment bisector. So when we when we have segments bisecting each other, these are the same action steps as a midpoint. Because when segments bisect segments, they are creating congruent segments. So let's start with AC bisecting BD. So when BD is bisected, which congruent segments are being created? Which thing should I be marking congruent? Cole?
DO and BO.
DO and BO. Segments DO and BO. There we go. And then when BD bisects AC, which segments are being broken and created? AO and CO. And I want to make sure, it doesn't really matter which ones get the 1 tick mark versus 2 tick marks. What matters is that they're paired up. 1 with 1 and 2 with 2. And we want those matching segments to be side by side, not on top of each other. Side by side, because we're going to set them congruent to each other. Okay, side by side. So I mark each set congruent. I list them side by side. And then my second action step when I'm creating congruent segments is to do what? After I mark the segments congruent, I mark them and I like to name them, and then I state them congruent and give the reason, which in this case is a definition. The reasons won't always be definitions. Sometimes they're properties, sometimes they're theorems or postulates. Right now, we're starting with these 4 basic definitions, okay? And for now, we're going to list the definition each time. So because this is a segment bisector instead of midpoint, we're going to say definition of segment bisector. You can just say segment bisect for short. Because definition of segment bisector.
Or just put it that once a week.
We're going to put it twice for now, because we really need to emphasize the fact that every time we make a statement, that statement needs to have a reason. Yeah, some of you have realized, oh hey, sometimes I can just type and then fill in my marks with my pencil. That's okay too, especially for the text stuff. I'm fine with that. But make sure it's with each statement. So again, don't write your congruency statement here. Don't write your congruency statement here and then write your definition down here. It needs to be matched up, congruency statement and reason together. They are connected. Yes.
What if I didn't have room to do a definition for both of them? Even though they have the same definition.
Either move them down together or draw a line to connect them. If you started and you're like, I ran out of room, connect them with a line for now.
Like I only have one definition for both of them.
Connect them with a line for now. Or you need to zoom in and work with your space more. Zoom in and write smaller. The idea of the statement being connected to its reason is super critical and important here. All right, so we finished number 4. I'm going to pause our video here.